Happy New Year, everyone. My name is Laolu Akode, and you are on to Inside Sources. And here is my take for today, entitled Nigeria Will Prevail Part 3, with the subheading, A New Commitment to Our Nation. Nigeria will certainly prevail because there are more Nigerians that wish this nation very well. I meet them every day all over town. They share their hopes and expectations for a great country. And they are more than the enemies of our country. However, those of us who are united by the love and desire for a truly great Nigeria, we must recommit ourselves to that objective starting this year, 2025. Dele Farotimi is not the only one that is enraged about some of the systemic rot in the land. And Aliko Dangote is not the only one with the resources and ideas that can transform our economy. The problem is that most of our people are hedging their bets. But it was Edmund Burke, the Anglo-Irish philosopher, who said, and I quote, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." End of quote. Let the good men and the good women who love Nigeria, let them speak up for the country, especially now that we have been told that 2025 is a landmark year. So all those who love this country genuinely must do something to secure the great future of Nigeria. Now, if we raise the standards significantly, politicians will ultimately have to follow suit. But if we continue to leave matters entirely in the hands of politicians, then we must remind ourselves that while there are a sprinkle of very good politicians around, too large a number of people holding political offices, especially in the last 25 years of the Fourth Republic, they are very self-centered, and they see their public positions more as a means for their personal aggrandizement. So what can be done? Number one, let our non-political elites take a keen interest in the reform of the political process. Let them not stay silent. Remember what Bishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa said, and I quote, "If you are neutral in the situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor," unquote. Number two, let more of our middle class, especially among the urban population, let them participate in the political process, especially as electorate. Currently, most of those who vote are lower class, urban and rural poor, who have become, for the most part, and unfortunately, victims of the weaponization of poverty by some of our politicians. If we don't work hard to change this, it is akin to winking in the dark. Number three, let our former presidents and former head of states and others alike come together as one to chart a new course for the country, not by involving themselves in partisan political games that will fix nothing. Let them visit the incumbent president and table ideas. Number four, let all those who are dissatisfied with the rot in the system, let them take baby steps to organize ourselves and begin to pack our voices and mount pressure on the political leaders of the day. Let us insist on what will be acceptable and what will not be acceptable in governance, especially in the states. Number five, let the youth stand up and understand two things. Number one, that they must act. And number two, that they must act mainly for the good of the larger number. They must understand public interests and guard it. Number six, let our religious leaders and other leaders of thought commit to raising the moral standards again. Time has come to have more sermons that will lift our currently declining moral values. Let's all unite against corrosive and grand corruption. And let us condemn corrupting influences when we see it. Now, if we just watch while a few of us are raping our commonwealth and don't actively preach against it, what we are doing is that we are indirectly endorsing such despicable conduct and thereby contaminating ourselves. Our society will gain nothing from that. It is even foolhardiness for those benefiting from the corruption of the day, because in due time there shall be a reckoning for sure. Finally, the governments at all levels must be very deliberate in fighting corruption. Former President Buhari is right when he said, if we don't kill corruption, corruption will kill us. Now, even if President Buhari didn't manage to put a big dent on corruption while he was president, he is still right in that assertion. Also, let governments at all levels begin to open up to sincere engagement with the people by creating meeting points like town halls and get out of their political comfort zones. Now, we have seen at the federal level that the president has started a media chat. Now, let that become regular, because this can build mutual trust between the government and the people. Such a trust is likely at an all-time low now if you measure it because of the hardship of our people currently. So we need a new commitment in this landmark year 2025 from both the people of this country and from the government. And there you have it. Inside Sources will be right back. Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today we are looking at the future of the country, especially regarding the question of power, electric power. Many of us agree that that is one area that we need to fix and that we need to fix urgently. Last year, we had at least 12 instances where the national grid collapsed. And a few days ago, AEDC in Abuja just announced that there's going to be blackout in several parts of FCT because of the relocation of transmission lines by FCDA. So to join me in that important conversation and to open our Inside Sources today, I have the former managing director of the Nigeria Bulk Electricity Trading Company, Dr. Nnaemeka Eweluka, who was also a member of the Presidential Task Force on Power Reforms for several years, and who had also worked with the University of London. Dr. Eweluka, you are welcome to Inside Sources.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akonde. Thank you so much.
All right. So I just wanted to take a general overview of what the problem is and how you think is the best approach to solve what is clearly an urgent problem. Are there very critical parts that you think we should focus on? Or in your own view, with your experience in that sector over the years, how can we sort out this problem urgently?
Thank you very much, Mr. Akonde. The over the past decade plus that I've been in I was in the Nigerian electricity market. One thing I can say is that a lot of progress has been made. Of course, we understand that Nigerians are focused on, when is it that you have steady, uninterrupted electricity? Now, it's in some ways somewhat akin to, people in a restaurant asking when will the food be served, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that there's no work going on in the kitchen. A lot of work is going on in the kitchen, but of course you still understand the perspective of those waiting to eat. And that work within the Nigerian power sector goes on, in different segments of the government space, be it the Ministry of Power that does the electricity policy, be it NERC that regulates the market, agencies like Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading that handle the commercial agreements in the market, to TCN that administers the grid, making sure that the grid works as it should. And other entities within the power space, including, of course, the newer ones like the FGN PowerCo, that is superintending the Presidential Power Initiative, the government's partnership with Siemens. Now, all these agencies are all working kind of towards addressing different parts of the same problem, but you're dealing with kind of a multifaceted problem that needs a multifaceted approach. In my view, the single most important change we've had, looking back over the past decade, is perhaps the amendment of the Electricity Act of 2023 that significantly opened up the space for states to kind of step into that space and support the government, the federal government. And what that has done is that it has democratized the electricity space significantly. And so you now have up to 8 different states trying different initiatives. I believe that it's a major step in the right direction taken by the current administration And so when you have states like from Enugu to Ekiti to Ondo to Imo to Edo, Kogi, Oyo, and more recently Lagos, all doing different things. Now, are they all going to get it right? Probably not, right? But what you now have is that you have different theaters where different things are happening. And ultimately, those that will get it right will become beacons of hope for others that are still coming up. And so, whilst looking at the current situation, there's sometimes one is, there's a basis to say, when will this electricity problem be sorted out? But kind of taking a deeper look at what's going on now, particularly at the state level, there is cause for optimism that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay, I mean, so that's a bit of optimism, and I want to dig deeper into that. But I wanted to also ask you, as somebody who has worked in that sector for clearly more than 10 years, now, the problem, and I know that, you didn't work with TCN, but, you work in the entire sector. Why do you think it is difficult for us, and this is a society government problem that I wanted you to just give me your own thoughts. Why is it difficult for us to hold the people responsible for the question of the grid failures that we have over and over again? How do you think about this? I know that you are a lawyer, and you handle quite a lot of the regulatory aspect of our power reform. The grid has collapsed over and over again. Is there a reason why we can't hold the people responsible for those collapses? We can't hold them accountable and kind of punish them to deter this from happening over and over again? What's your perspective?
Thank you. My view on that really is, again, I'll use the kind of the analogy of saying that my car has broken down, therefore I'll hold the mechanic responsible. That's not necessarily the case. It may very well be that it's a mechanic's issue, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a bigger issue. It could be equipment failure, of a critical component of your vehicle. It could be that you're not maintaining it appropriately. There's so many things that can lead to a car breaking down. Now, in the grid space, I know that late last year, after it had happened a couple of times, the government set up an interagency committee to kind of do a deep dive and advise on, what are the issues causing these sorts of, disturbances on our national network. And so it's a multifaceted situation. You have the element of vandalism, right, that sometimes happens. There are also elements of perhaps maintenance that should happen maybe better. There are also elements of investment. More money needs to go into strengthening the grid. There are elements of equipment theft. So it's a multifaceted kind of situation where there are different things happening at the same time. And I believe that having set up that committee and received the report of the committee, I believe that the government perhaps is in a better position now, to actually zero down and kind of cascade down accountability and responsibility, across the chain. I mean, when it comes to things like vandalism, right? Ultimately, it may point to perhaps the need for more synergy between the federal government and the traditional rulers. Because at the end of the day, every single equipment that is vandalized anywhere is within a traditional domain. There is a traditional ruler, there are traditional institutions within that space that can complement efforts being done by the federal government, by the state government, by the local government. So I believe that working together, creating that synergy that pulls in the public, not just as spectators waiting for the system to fix itself, but also recognizing that when something is vandalized, it affects everybody. When your next door neighbor is bypasses the meter, right? It affects everybody.
Yeah.
When you come across where they are selling scrap metal. It affects everybody, because that scrap metal you're seeing there could be metal taken out from the transformer in your neighborhood. Right. So we need to kind of draw in everybody into that space, because we're all stakeholders in ensuring that this system actually works as intended.
Okay, thank you. But maybe the last question is, I want to come back to those new electricity markets that you talked about. You said that we now have about 8 states that are trying to now explore the new amendments that now allow states to regulate electricity. Now, what do you think, in your own view, is the best template? How is it that this can be done that will be to the maximum benefit of the consumers? So I'm saying that, can you give us a model, or how this will ultimately, how this can be done in such a way that it will redound to the benefit of the consumers? I know that there's also the investment complement, maybe you also want to address that, but I'm concerned more about what should Nigerians expect, what should consumers expect? How can we do this in a way that will solve the problem and the consumers will benefit as much as possible?
Ultimately, for me, one of the key benefits coming out of kind of the more fragmentation of the power sector, right, is that you're going to have an upsurge in competition, particularly at the state level. And where competition is done appropriately, it ultimately leads to service improvements. It results in lower prices. And so I believe that different states having their different regulatory authorities, right, it makes the work of NERC easier, right? Because they now have fewer states to focus on, because you now have other states that are now almost kind of running their own thing on their own. The structure we had earlier, where you had, for instance, if you have a problem at the local level, NERC had their NERC forum, in different states doing different things. But ultimately, they would have to report back to headquarters.
Yes.
Now you have the states having full control over every aspect of the regulation of the electricity. So in some ways, it is the electricity equivalent of local government. Local governments bring government to the grassroots. So when you have states now regulating electricity markets, it brings the solution closer to the point where the problem is originating. More broadly, I see the enhanced competition triggering innovation. There's going to be a lot of innovative things going on at the state level. There's going to be a lot of improvement in service quality, because you now have smaller chunks of authority. When you had the 11 disco structure, which of course you still have, but now with each disco covering like 3 or 4 states, it was a very unwieldy arrangement. Now you have discos having to incorporate the state discos. Okay, so a state disco is much more it's a much better position to tackle problems that are domiciled within that particular state. Now, looking at it kind of more broadly from a policy point of view, and kind of taking a look into the future, I do think that at some point we're going to have states that start to come together to create synergy, perhaps even along the geopolitical zones, right? Yeah, because you now have states that can say, why don't we pull resources together? Okay, we don't all have to invest in generation. Okay, of the 6 states in this region, 2 can focus on generation, whilst the other ones can focus on transmission, distribution. So that way they can synergize at that local level and kind of pull forces together and start to create bigger electricity markets. Because ultimately, why I see that as kind of the way of the future ultimately is that a lot of investors are equally looking at investments at scale, okay? And so rather than investing, 10 megawatts in this state, 2 megawatts in the other state, an investor would rather invest and build a 200 megawatt power plant in one location, okay? So those are the things I see that will ultimately perhaps start happening in future. It's still perhaps some way off. You're still having the kind of what I call the experimentation happening at the state by state level. But I see policy is not static. I see policy continue to evolve, going ahead. But the good thing is that we are now on a track that sees the federal government kind of beginning to roll back its authority, allowing states to do more. And ultimately, I believe that the consumers will be absolutely in a better position to benefit from the reforms that are going on at the moment.
Okay, so do you think that possibly the tariffs will also go down with this kind of new arrangement that we're talking about?
Yeah, so that's why I say that wherever there is competition, and wherever competition is well managed, of course, there's a regulatory part of ensuring that competition is fair, right? And that elements that pertain to, for instance, market collusion, etc., are weeded out. So where competition is done right, under proper regulatory purview, absolutely. And of course, even as we are hoping that the power sector improves, and I still believe that power sector will improve, and I believe it's trending in the right direction, it's important to keep in mind that there are some elements of the power sector that are domiciled sort of outside of the power sector. The power sector does not control things like macroeconomic factors. Right. Power sector does not control inflation, does not control exchange rate, etc.
Right.
And so as all the elements, all the entities, all the stakeholders within the power sector are doing the critical things that need to be done, there's also that need for synergy, kind of nationwide synergy, to ensure that other elements that feed into the developmental space that impact on the power sector are equally kind of trending in the right direction.
Interesting. So just to wrap it up, what timeline do you see, as somebody who is very versatile in this sector, what timeline do you see to any of these states being able to get to the point that it will be supplying, electricity to the people in the states? Is it going to take a year, 2 years, from those 8 states? Do you see those who are ahead of the game? I'm saying that basically, when do you think this can become a reality to have the states, begin to roll out their own electricity?
It's difficult to say. Why do I say that? First of all, there is a part about having the appropriate manpower, okay? The electricity is one of those areas where, it takes a while to have trained hands, there are regulatory, there are electrical issues, there are legal, there are commercial, etc. All those that's a lot of expertise, and there's only so much that can go around, right? Even as between all the 8 states. So different states will have different levels of speed in having the appropriate people in place to actually do the work. Okay, given the fact, of course, that we are in a democratic space where elections take place, every 4 years.
4 years.
I see a lot of governors that equally want to make clear impact, before the next election cycle. Because you need to present tangible, concrete outcomes to the people before they can vote for you. And so I see that given that the next elections will be taking place, in short order, I believe that a lot of governors are mindful of that and will do the needful to make sure that their citizens actually start seeing the benefits, that their citizens understand that this is not just kind of policy reform, but that this is actually tangible, concrete reform that actually has impact on their lives.
So do you think any of the 8 states will be able to roll out electricity before 2025? Yes or no? Is it possible? Is it possible?
It's difficult to say, but what I'll say is that what I see is very encouraging. What I see is very encouraging from Enugu to Lagos or other states. I see a lot of enthusiasm. I see a lot of enthusiasm. I see a lot of determination. I actually think that kind of, if you look at the factors that drive development, I actually believe that enthusiasm, that determination, that quest to make a difference, I actually rank it higher than technical expertise, right? Because if you have the technical expertise, but you don't really care, then there's really no development. But if you are absolutely committed to making a difference, if you are altruistic in your thinking from a public policy point of view, if you really love your citizens, then every other thing will fall in place. Every other thing will fall in place. So I believe that those sorts of factors driving the electricity space, starting from the act being enacted to the states that quickly saw the benefits in keying into it and quickly taking steps to set up committees to advise them, etc. Now moving on forward to having their laws in place. Now moving on further to a lot has it's been quite some speed, I must say. So I think that there's a lot of enthusiasm, there's a lot of determination, there's a lot of passion. It doesn't mean that they will all get it right, like I said.
Right.
Some will get it wrong, but ultimately the good thing about having different experiments happening in different places is that you can learn from others.
True.
Which is why it's actually a good thing that the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, they've set up this mechanism for coordinating all the 36 states. So what that does is that periodically representatives from these 36 states meet and compare notes. They compare notes and they learn from each other. I believe that process of meeting regularly, learning from each other, drawing experiences, I believe that ultimately it puts us in a better position to solve the problem.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Iwiluka, for the insight. And I think I agree with you that the fact that states can do their own electricity is a game changer. And it's quite exciting, that you are reporting that there's a lot of enthusiasm. And hopefully Nigerians, in some of the states can begin to benefit from this thing even before 2025. That would be really, really exciting. And it will set the standard for every other state. Thank you so much for coming to Inside Sources. And I hope you enjoy your time, your free time, because I know that your skill will be required, as all of this is going forward. Thank you so much for your service. I know you left in July last year, and I can see that you are having a very nice vacation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being on this forum, and I look forward to continue to engage with you on these different issues that bother on development. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nnameka Iwiluka, the immediate past managing director of MBET. Inside Sources will be right back. Welcome back to Inside Sources. You remember I had started this discussion on the Nigerian police and its relationship with the Nigerian people. And my guest, who is also returning now to continue this conversation, is the leading Nigerian historian on Nigerian police. So I'd like to welcome back to Inside Sources, Professor Kemi Rotimi. Prof, you're welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, so, just for us to continue the conversation. So let's take it to state police. This is one issue that many of the voices, both in the political scene and outside of the political scene, say that, look, we have to consider the option of state police at this point with the current crisis. I just want to open this discussion today with what's your own view on state police and how we can make it work, because you have studied the Nigerian police for a quite considerable period of time. Prof.
As I said in our last encounter, we are not about to create state police. We are about to recreate policing at other levels apart from the central level. Because before Abraham, Jesus was. In the First Republic, before it collapsed, the principle of federalism undergirded policing. That was why, apart from the MPF, you had the native authority police forces in northern Nigeria. And also in the western region, whose nomenclature was later changed to local government police forces. So we are not about to create state police, no. We're about to recreate. The thing to ask is, why were they abolished? But if you are not going there yet, I can say authoritatively that while it lasted, the local government and native authority police forces rendered service in respect of the primary duty of the police. Prevention of crime, when that fails, detection of the criminal and bringing the criminal to justice. They did a good job of it. And that was community policing par excellence. In the matter of political engagement, yes, there are their challenges. But as I've said, the longest chapter in my book is about police and politics. And the dynamics, the considerations are varied. And what applied to the native authority police forces in the matter of political involvement still apply to the Nigeria police personnel now.
All right. So your view is that we haven't. No, sorry. It's not a new thing. But if you look at just trying to deepen that comparative analysis that you started in the regions. The way it was managed then, that the federal police still sort of superimposed on whatever was happening in the regions. And I don't think that the NA authority, which was in the north, I don't think it was as prominent as it was in the west at that time.
Okay, you have actually mixed it all up, but I'll help you.
Okay.
In the north, the better known police was the native authority police.
That's my point.
No, wait a minute.
All right.
Now, in the west, that was where you had this quote and unquote contention for space by the native local government police forces and the Nigeria police force. And the background to that I already given. It all started in late 1940s in Oyo province when G.A.V. de Beausset, whose photograph adorns the back of my book, the viewers can see, there's the man, who changed the picture in Oyo province by provincializing the police forces within that province into Oyo provincial police force. And that pattern was what the Awolowo government met and expanded to cover the whole of the region. In northern Nigeria, from cradle to grave, the Nigerian police were outsiders looking in. The best they could do was to serve as advisors to the native authority police. Fortunately for me, at least one of those NAP advisors is still alive, is the oldest surviving Inspector General of Police that we have now, Alhaji Ali Atta.
Okay.
And by the grace of God, and Allah willing, it will be at my forum, which I'm convening in April, on this issue of deregulation of policing
in Nigeria.
It's a 5-day interactive forum. And the likes of Ali Atta, we have either the first day or the second day to give their reminiscences of the kind of service they rendered as NA police advisor. What that word meant in reality, equally advice on training, some aspect of discipline, but not control. No way.
So the control was retained
The control was with the native authority.
Which is like the local government.
Yes.
And this even happened across the country.
No. In northern Nigeria, in the west, the moment the NA police in our province were provincialized, the influence of the local government councillors, who included the chiefs, waned. But the Ibadan chiefs were perceptive enough to tell G.A.V. de Beausset, you are going to make us pay the piper without dictating the tunes. And they were right on the
just for context. So what year was this? Around what time? This story that
I just told you, 1947 was 43 to 47 was when that provincialization thing came up. But I must stop to add that if the coup of 66 had not taken place, Ahmad Bello had gotten interested in the provincialization scheme of the West. And he was going to provincialize the NA police forces in the north, because many may not know it. Ahmad Bello was beginning to deal with the emirs in northern Nigeria and assuming more power than they could give him, but the testing ground was in Kano. But we're not going there
yet. And just to wrap up that part, it's also known that the Eastern region was also about to try. Can you talk a little about that?
The Eastern region,
get into it.
The Eastern region for all of the colonial period did not have native authority police because of the difficulty that the invading colonialists had in identifying authority structure.
But jump to the First Republic. At what point were the Eastern region getting interested in it?
They got interested in it after the 1965 crisis in Western region.
Okay.
And Okpara couldn't campaign in part of the West, including that wonderful woman, the wife, who was a fantastic campaigner. When they saw her and saw the effectiveness of having police of their own to contain, quote unquote, invading political unwanted elements so Okpara got interested and was going to create
no you didn't say invading from the west to
invading
the east,
from the east invading from the east
to the west
outside. I mean, when I say invading now, NCNC UPGA then wanting to campaign in the Western region, which was controlled by the NNDP and MPC alliance. Right. Okpara was going to create local government police forces for the Eastern region.
Yes.
The bill had been discussed. If the coup had not taken place from January 66, the Eastern region would have had local government.
That was actually what I wanted to confirm. All right, so let's now look at how it is, because I'm sure you will agree that I think we are very close to getting some kind of state police now. But the major fear of most people, even including myself, who advocate for state police, is how are we going to manage a situation where the governors will not abuse the powers that we have over state police? What's your view on this, Prof?
Very easy.
Oh, interesting.
I said last week, but now I have the opportunity to elaborate. Any governor who has control over the police in his state during the pendency of his governorship, which at the maximum can be only for 8 years, is a fool. He has only one prayer to say: to die in office. If he does not die in office, everything he uses the police while he's in office to do against his opponent will be used against him. And I repeat, the police owe loyalty to governments of the day. And it is not for nothing. Because they didn't create themselves, and they are not the ones who decided the outcome of the election. A man has been sworn in as governor. They are obliged to work for him. Occasionally, for those who get emotional about the governor, either from family ties or membership of secret court or for political affiliation, overreach themselves, they occasionally suffer. But once that regime is over, they are, they are still there. The police are there. So the new man comes, sir, and he salutes. And the next instruction, just give the instruction, he obliges. And we don't have to go far to appreciate this fact. Since 1999, we have had only the Nigeria Police Force. Haven't you seen what has happened in states? There are former governors who can't go to their state today. I mean, there was a jamboree in Port Harcourt yesterday, and blah, 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 blah. Was that the way it has always been?
Okay.
When the equation changes, so it behoves an incumbent governor to be decent. And I insist, you cannot legislate for decency and self-respect, or the other thing expression that I like to use. Now, when you abuse the power that you are very temporary, if there is any beauty about Nigeria's current constitution, especially at the executive level, it is term limitation. However nice you may be, 80 years, it will end.
Okay, Prof. So quite a few things that I want to get your views around that. So we have a situation where you find out that governors, when they are leaving, they have a very keen, almost desperate desire to put in their godson. And we have quite a few of the tensions all over the thing. Now, based on what you said, I guess, could that be one of the reasons why you see that level of desperation to make sure that, look, when I'm out here, there is somebody that is within my control that will be continuing the affairs. But more importantly, why putting that at the back of your mind? Don't you think, or how do you respond to the idea that if we can develop some other means to do some check, some separation of the powers between the governor and other institutions of government or society on the police? Because quite a lot of people are thinking around this. Are you saying that that is of no use, Prof?
Nigerians, when I listen to them talk, especially those who enjoy visibility on television screens, pontificate about what they know next to nothing about. Dry law, late Professor Emeritus Jalai. I was very close to him because it's in dry law.
Which prophet was that again?
Jalai, David Jalai.
Okay, yeah.
Jalai,
Professor of law.
Jalai, yes, Jalai.
So it's Jalai.
Yes.
So it's not Ijalaye.
It's not Jalai, it's Jalai.
Jalai.
Now, dry law. You can codify anything, write anything in the rule books. Operation of the rule of what is in the rules is what is important.
It's true.
You can't legislate for decency, and you cannot legislate for obedience to the law. You have written the law, beautiful. Implementation. When it concerns policing, I have told you, many people do not know. Policing is about investing one man with state authority to affect the freedom of another. Even in the matter of crime control, the criminal wants that freedom to be able to commit a crime. The policeman, so the policeman's business is to catch him. Catching him means inconveniencing the man. And many do not know when you talk about bribery about police. Oftentimes, it is even the criminal that starts the process of bribing the policeman, But we're not going to go into that this afternoon. Now, misusing the police is a risky game. Don't just try it, but you need that determination from within you to show that you're a decent person.
To control yourself.
I'm not going to name names, but cast your mind back 1999 to now. How many governors have planted successors, and what has happened between the successors and the predecessors? The one that is most topical, most raging, Rivers. The one that is next to it, Kano. The one that is
Kaduna, actually.
Kaduna closer to the river station than Kano, but Kano is also brewing. And if you know anything about Kano politics, when the Mahokata there go mad, they really go mad. So we are praying for them. If there is palaver between Kwakwaso and his successor,
it hasn't really. I see your point.
Now that it has not escalated doesn't mean that we don't know that it is brewing. But the Kaduna one is already there.
Yeah,
so, planting a successor is wishful thinking, because you have no way of controlling the successor. The successor accedes to power. And like one late Inspector General of Police told me when I discussed the matter, he said when the man has acquired power, it's a different ball game. Similar like Fubara. Why the campaign last year, Osuke was doing all of the campaigning. The guy was just following. Now, similar like Fubara said the jungle has matured. And we are seeing the evidence of the jungle maturing. Presenting a budget to 3 members of Assembly.
We don't want to go into that.
No, we're not going into that, but just saying that planting a successor, if you extend it, and therefore expecting that the police you created and whom your successor has inherited will still oblige. No.
It's not true.
Whatever your successor directs them to do, it doesn't even to direct in that manner of, hey, you come and go and kill X. No. A law will just be created. contravention of what do they call this thing? Land Use Act or building code, building plan, the place will be demolished. So police supervising the thing. Interesting. And then you're shouting.
Very, very, very important point. I must tell you, Prof, about the fact that it's only 8 years. But of course, like they say in Yoruba, which means that before
the damage will have been done.
That will have been done before you get rid of the evil one. But it's still a useful thing in terms of hoping that people can restrain themselves. But let's move it to something different now. So when we have state police, is he also, do you think is of any use if we are able to also do anything to affirm the place of the state assemblies? As it is now, most of those state assemblies, they're just in the pocket of the governors. Do you think that might be helpful in any way to try to see how can we strengthen the supposed implied independence of the state assemblies?
Look, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, President, I remember one of his favorite quotes. Those days as governor, power is not served a la carte. You have to struggle for it. The independence of the legislature must be struggled for. And to be fair, many may not fancy Saraki as president of the Senate of the Federal Republic while it lasted, 2015 to 2019. But the Buhari executive can tell what they saw in the hands of the legislature, the National Assembly. Now, I am not saying, this is not to say that what Saraki did was quote unquote,
of course.
But as a lover of biographies and American politicians, whoever wants a copy, I can loan mine, but you pay. The biography of Tip O'Neill. Tip O'Neill is arguably one of the most famous speakers of the American Congress. He lasted as a legislator for 50 years, from Massachusetts through to the center. What happened between Saraki and Buhari was what happened between Tip O'Neill and Carter, who died a few days back. And the guy put it, if you like laughing. The man came from Plains, Georgia, where he was growing groundnuts with some characters. And they got to Washington, and they were behaving as if they didn't know we had been here. we dealt with them. I mean, that portion of the book excites me, or interests me because of the Saraki Buhari thing. Now, so back to the assembly, local assembly. President Bola Tinubu is bringing a revolution. Many people are still not recognizing it, This autonomy for local government. If it had been in place the other day, that guy in Ogun, that journalist who was chairman of a local government, Wale Ade, would not have been removed as easily as Governor Abiodun Dido. No, because the things that the president is putting in place now make such moves very difficult. Yes, the governor can still induce members of the legislature at the local government level to start the process. I don't want the chairman anymore. It could happen also at the House of Assembly level. But a dedicated speaker leading the House of Assembly who knows his onions can look the governor in the eye straight. Sir, this is not on. Did you see what happened to Saraki? Court every day, corruption case. And the National Assembly guys did very well. Any day was going to court, no sitting. They would just hire bosses and go to one month. So it's about struggling for power and showing that this is not a unitary compartment government arrangement. You have the executive, you have the legislature, you have the judiciary.
Okay, so your point is that, and I agree with it, but just to put it in proper perspective, is that we have to get to a point where the members of the assembly, they have to be the ones themselves to assert, their control. But it's difficult when you have a situation where, for instance, in River State, former governor said that I bought the forms for all of them, even the governor.
When he bought the forms for all of them, was this his money? These people govern us and they make it look like they're doing us a favor. That's why man rehabilitates a school and puts his name.
In the name of his father or his nonsense. Anyway, let's move along, because I still want us to touch at least two more issues around the issue of state police. So, in your own view, what would be the relationship, or what ought to be a relationship between the federal police and the state police when we do have it, in such a way that we get the proper dividends? How do you foresee that? What would be your recommendation?
It is not unprecedented, so I'm not making any recommendation. All it requires is a tweaking of aspects of the chapters of my book. And if this is self-promotion, why not? My bragging rights. Now,
Prof,
why the First Republic lasted, the MPF related with the NA police. I've told you in one significant regard, provision of training. When NA police began to attend training schools, they started in Enugu. The first training school that we had in Nigeria for the police.
Yeah.
They were sending posse of their contingents of the NA police from the west there. In Kaduna, they were also sending contingents there. Later, to show you how committed the Northern Regional Government was to the NA police scene, they built a Nigeria NA police training school, but within the premises of the Nigeria Police Training School. And it became the savior when the fortunes of the MPF were declining. If there is commitment, dedication, the relationship does not have to be conflictual. Right now, because the state police scene is looking newish and the MPF is already on ground, yes, they can help with brushing up the first set of recruits before the states think of how to go about the issue of training schools. And I said last week that in the immediate, this is geopolitical arrangement, they could come together on that basis and start a single training school. That is one for Southwest, one for Southeast, and the various places. Okay. With time, states that are buoyant enough, my suspicion is that Lagos may opt to have its own alone. Yeah. So, and if that is the case, it does not mean that Lagos is not interested. It's saying that we can go on by ourselves. If the other Southwest governors want to piggyback, by all means. But it will be in their best interest to have a training school in geopolitical zone. They can take off on that note. And you have this retired personnel of the MPF who will be very glad from sheer regional patriotism or statism to chip in their bit. And some of us have the material that we can give them to rework the syllabuses, both for the new state police and even the existing MPF. They have materials.
Okay, last question is a question of funding. So some of the people who at the federal level had opposed the idea of state police. As you know, APC had actually campaigned on state police, but it couldn't be done in the first 8 years of APC. And one of the issues was around funding, that first of all, the states may not be able to fund it. And then secondly, the states responded, look, if we are taking on policing responsibility, that means revenue allocation should change. We should get more resources to do that. How do you settle the matter in your view? What would be your
Very simple. Again, without meaning to be President Tinubu's campaigner or how do I put it, a praise singer, the man is putting certain things in place. What is known to all of us now is that the revenue that goes to the state has improved. The share of the FAC as
the cash, the raw cash
has increased. So funding cannot be an issue. As I said last week, we have two governors now docked for finagling with the state finances. Taraba, who didn't contest his matter, and then the Kogi guy, who was the hide and seek eventually ended up in the support of the FCC.
They're also investigating Okowa now.
I know. They are investigating so very many of them. It is the ones whose matters are mature or ripe that they tell us.
Okay.
The point is that no state lacks the money to run state police because they are already rendering assistance to the Nigeria police force.
So you don't think that we should tweak the revenue allocation formula to give the states more because of state police? You don't think so?
The revenue allocation has already been tweaked. When you start and you can present a case to the federal authorities as to why you need more, you will be listened to. But not this thing about howling, rejecting everything that the suggestion is made. No, why are not my colleagues? Who has the tendency to reject anything? No. Our intellectuals, sit down, look at the thing first, and let us look at where are the problematic areas. So any state can run state police if they get their acts together and cut wastage. Yeah. A man comes to the office and appoints 1,000 and something aides. Whether he pays them or does not pay them, it is scandalous to even have that kind of a thing. Where you have commissioners, you have the civil servants. I mean, yes, a number of those human beings are like evil servants, yes, but are there. So, but when you have this retinue of aides, idle, and that's the word. So you can conserve resources because to own police, if you do not feed them well, if you do not train them well, if you do not provide the accoutrement and the materials they need, you have only created armed bandits in uniform.
Thank you so much. And you ended on a very strong note, and I do agree with you entirely that we need to maybe when we have next opportunity, we talk more about that. We need to deal with the problem of welfare for the police. What we have right now is very poor, and you give a policeman a gun, but you don't pay him decent wage. So that will be our next topic when next I'm able to grab you. Thank you so much, Professor Kemi Rotimi, leading historian on Nigerian police, and thank you for your contributions. And we'll be looking forward to all the other things that you have to do around the police, because I know that you are actually an advocate for some very useful reform.
You are invited to my forum.
Yes, and I will be there.
And you take place soon.
Thank you so much. And there you have it, another edition of Inside Sources. I just say a bumper package today. And we will continue to say that Nigeria will prevail, which means Nigeria will win, because we will not relent. And I'm sure that you are not going to give up also. My name is Laudo Akonde. Once again, Happy New Year. Thank you for watching. And by the grace of God, I'll see you again